My next guest is Congressman John Curtis of Utah. He chairs the Conservative Climate Caucus that has more than 75 Republican House members. Congressman Curtis, thanks for joining us today.
Delight to be with you. Thank you.
Congressman, tell me about this Conservative Climate Caucus. I have heard of it. I didn't know there were that many members of it. How often do you meet? What do you talk about? And what's the future of this caucus?
By the way, I've been told it's the second largest caucus in Washington. I think that's pretty exciting. We meet, when we're in DC, we meet approximately weekly, although sometimes we've had even 2 or 3 meetings. And our goal is to get Republicans comfortable about talking about climate issues and energy issues, and giving them the facts so that they're comfortable talking and able to actually offer ideas instead of just saying everything that we don't like.
And what is everything you don't like? That it's a hoax?
Well,
that climate change is a hoax?
No, it could be, I think, encompassed in kind of extremist ideas. I call them take your head off to fix a headache ideas. And I think that's turned Republicans off, kind of this extremism. And the reality of it is I find that Republicans care deeply about the earth, and that they have a lot of good ideas.
As far as coming together, we're in election years, and Democrats have tried and so far failed to pass sweeping climate change legislation. We'll see if that's resurrected in the Senate in the coming months. That really will depend on Joe Manchin, Democrat from West Virginia. But going forward, energy is such a polarizing issue right now. Do you think the parties could come together? The House is likely to flip, so there'll probably be divided government in some shape or form in 2023. Do you think that potentially, and the odds are against this, that the parties could come together on some version of addressing climate change?
I think one of the misconceptions is that we don't. I'll point back to the Energy Act of 2020, one of the largest energy bipartisan bills ever passed, and reducing hydrofluorocarbons and investing in technology. And so sometimes I think our disagreements overshadow our agreements, and I do think we can come together. I think we have, and that we'll continue to. Not that it isn't difficult, right? Everything in DC can be difficult, but I think the past shows that we can work together.
The Democrats, as you know, after they took the House, they have set up a climate committee. Do you think that's necessary, or do you think there are other committees that have been around for many years and decades that can handle this, the committees of jurisdiction?
I met yesterday in a hearing with the health secretary, and they had increased the health budget $100 million for climate. And I think we have to be super careful with priorities. Look, I'm very involved in this, and I agree it's important. But when we start prioritizing climate over nutrition and things like that, I think that the American people are going to push back on that, and as they should. So I do think there's room for dialogue. I'm on the Energy and Commerce Committee. That's a great place to have that dialogue and to have that legislation. But I think we have to be careful in some cases that it doesn't dominate otherwise very important priorities.
And so do you think it's likely that committee, if Republicans take over, that committee will not continue?
It's hard to say that, but I can tell you this, that we ourselves are working. Kevin McCarthy has started a task force on energy and climate. It's led by Garrett Graves from Louisiana. And its intent is to put meat on the bones for what Republicans would support and what we'll want to move forward in the next Congress. And so I think the dialogue will continue. It's just a matter of where and where it best belongs.
And that's a great point, because we have written about how House Republicans, Senate Republicans are not planning this, but House Republicans are planning some type of, and you're a lot more familiar with than I am, but some type of agenda like in 1994. When do we get to see that, or when will the Energy Task Force information data agenda, when will we get to see that, and specifically, when will voters get to see that?
So our goal is by the time they vote on us in November, we'll have that blueprint out there. And it's not just energy, it's foreign affairs, it's high tech, all of these different really important areas. And that we put together this, what we would call commitment to America in the fall, so that when they vote for us, they know what our agenda is. And then if we're fortunate enough to take the majority, we ourselves know how we're going to govern and what our blueprint will be.
The Democrats control Congress and the White House. Congressman, what has been flaws in their approach? Obviously, they've tried to ram something through using reconciliation, which is a process that Republicans use on the Trump tax cuts, as well as President Obama on Obamacare. But what have you seen as the mistakes of the Democratic majority on climate change in this Congress?
Listen, if I had a magic wand, we would start with this idea of worldwide greenhouse gas emissions, not just U.S., but worldwide greenhouse gas emissions. How do we reduce them? And if we spend $1 over here, what is the result? Let's spend that dollar where it reduces the very most. And so if I had to redo their plan, I'd simply say, let's focus on worldwide greenhouse gas emissions, not just U.S., and let's make sure when we're spending money that it's leading us to that goal in the most effective way, rather than more of this shotgun approach of, hey, let's put some charging stations in on a freeway without thinking through, is there even a grid that would service those? And even if there's a grid, is there power that would service those? And that's the type of thinking I think that Republicans hope to bring to this, more of a practical approach to reducing greenhouse gas emissions.
Congressman Curtis, just on energy prices now, obviously we have an ongoing war in the Ukraine. We have gas prices that are at record levels, inflation at the grocery store, as well as gas prices, a major concern. How do you balance addressing climate while also being cognizant of these high gas prices that are really frustrating so many consumers right now?
Well, you're right. And this is the good news about the message that Republicans want to bring to the table. I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I don't think you have to sacrifice national security. I don't think you have to pay high gas prices. And I don't think you have to kill our economy. And yet we can still reduce emissions. And that's the message we're trying to bring to the table, is they're not mutually exclusive. We can reduce emissions. We can be energy independent. We can bring prices down, and we can boost our economy. And let's be smart about this, because all of those categories are extremely important, and important to the American people.
And it's interesting, looking back over the years, and politics has gotten a lot more polarizing. But if you look back a couple decades, you had George W. Bush and Joe Lieberman and John McCain working on the environment, the cap and trade bill that passed the House in 2009, very controversial bill that Democrats have a different approach now than they did back then. But even back then, 8 Republicans in the House voted for that legislation. Joe Biden ran as a uniter, and that's part of the reason he's president today. But as you know, Republicans have been very frustrated. They don't feel like the White House has reached out. After the election, I don't think much is going to change probably before the election, but Joe Biden's probably going to have a choice. He's probably going to lose the House, maybe the Senate. Do you see some type of pivot from this president that could actually get some stuff done on a bipartisan basis next year and possibly the following 2024?
I really hope so. Really nothing of substance happens in Washington without bipartisan support. And when it does from time to time, then it's forever attacked. Right. So if we really want to make progress on this, we'll work on a bipartisan manner. And hey, listen, I was at the inauguration. I heard those promises to be bipartisan, and I'm ready to take him up on those. Right. And lift our end of the stick. We've got to work on this together, and being bipartisan will yield the best results for our country.
Just kind of interested on a personal level, have the White House reached out to you when you talk to other House Republicans on other issues? Has there been a lot of outreach, or really not much at all?
So I would compliment Secretary Granholm, who came and met with my caucus, and we actually found some common ground in a couple of areas. One of them is on permit reform. And we all know permitting is taking too long. It doesn't matter whether you're trying to permit a wind farm or a nuclear facility, it's taking too long. So we found that common ground, and I'm excited to work with her and take her up on her willingness to work on that. And so, yes, but let me also say you can never do enough, right? Would love for them to reach out more and have more communication with us.
When you're at home in your home state of Utah, what are constituents talking about specifically on energy issues? Obviously, gas prices are a major concern, but what are you hearing at home that you take to Washington on a daily, weekly basis?
Yeah, my district is very conservative. Utah is very conservative. I represent coal, I represent oil and gas. And the demonization of not just oil and gas and coal, but the very people who for decades have sacrificed their health and their safety so that all of us could go over to the wall and flip a switch and have the lights come on is really unfortunate, particularly when you study the facts and realize that we can use these good people and these U.S. petroleum products that have life cycle greenhouse gas emissions that are much less than, for instance, Russia. And why we're not advocating for them and ensuring for them is a surprise to me, because we can actually use these good people to reduce emissions.
Congressman John Curtis, chair of the Conservative Climate Caucus, this has been great. Thanks for speaking with me today. Really appreciate it. I think it's great that both parties are able to talk about it, and I think it's great that you're urging your Republican colleagues, hey, let's talk about this issue.
Thanks for the time, and hope we can do it again.